to the Mystic View. I hope everyone's getting ready for Valentine's Day. I have something to say about Valentine's Day, but I want to show off my Flyest t-shirt from C.L. Parker, who was on a few weeks ago, right before her release of A Million Guilty Pleasures. And I'm wearing it today to celebrate because a week after the release, A Million Guilty Pleasures has made the USA Today bestsellers list. So we're really excited about that. Yay! So that's why I'm wearing the Flyest t-shirt that I just got today. So, but Valentine's Day. I don't know if everyone is aware of how holidays affect the paranormal. So I thought I would bring up the fact that holidays, especially ones that are emotionally triggered, or like Christmas and Valentine's Day, those are prime times for paranormal activity. And it's also a prime time for communicating with the other side, your loved ones, as well as if you use psychic energy or spiritual energy to attract things into your life, especially love or romance. If you're needing to attract love or romance, Valentine's Day is the perfect day for that. And one of the ways that you can do that is to communicate with the spirit guides or the angels of your soulmate. You can actually write a letter to your future soulmates, guides, or angels and explain to them that you're waiting for them and if they could like help you out and speed it along. And angel power kind of kicks in and starts lining you up to meet your soulmate. So I just wanted to share that since it's Valentine's Day. I hope to talk to Wes, my guest tonight, about spiritual energy and working with higher beings to manifest or even to use in investigations. So without further ado, my guest tonight is Wes Forsythe. Wes, I'm so glad to have you.
It is nice to be here on your new show.
My new show. I'm still getting comfortable with it. I'm not as elegant as I should be, but I have fun.
Well, you can see I'm very utilitarian.
You are. So how are the cows?
Well, I'll put it this way. Well, we've made it past the deadline, so I should not have to leave the show to go birth calves. We've got 2 that are ready to pop that I'm going to go out after the show and check on. So we're hoping they hold off one more night and let it warm up just a little bit more.
Oh, yeah, that would be nice. I remember those days because, you know, I come from the farm and we had horses and cows and they always decided to come at the most inconvenient time, either when it's pouring down rain. We had one in a hurricane and the foal was stuck. So that wasn't a good thing. So I totally know how that goes. Yeah.
Well,
we have angels to help you with that, you know.
Well, I actually have an entire angel prayer. Well, it's not. I don't like to call it a prayer because I don't believe in praying to angels. I talk to them, but I do have a acknowledgement, I would call it. And one of the things is one of the archangels is in charge of farms and stuff, and I actually bring him up and thank him for watching over everything and in keeping everything going.
That's cool. That's what I do too. I have like a legion. I call them my legion. I have like certain angels for certain things and ascended masters, but I don't pray to them. I just kind of, it's like a power statement, like a decree or an invocation.
Yes.
But yeah. So I have problems with prayer.
I watch myself not to use that. Now if I'm praying to my higher being, the God that I worship, then I don't feel bad about including them in the prayer. But yeah, I try to not cross that line. But yes, I just pretty much talk to them and thank them and give them marching orders on occasion.
They like orders. Many people don't know that because you have free will, angels and masters, they can't just interfere in your life. You have to invite them to. You have to ask them to.
Yeah, but asking, you just said it. Asking them to I'm comfortable with that.
Right.
But I've had several psychics tell me that I have the calling to boss them around, as for lack of a better word, and I'm very uncomfortable with that. I mean, in an emergency type situation, I guess, but that's one of those little things that I just don't have my head wrapped around yet. So nobody needs to call BS on it because I've already backed away from it, the concept.
Well, it's like, okay, if you were like in ancient times and you were a high priest, it's just like that. You have the ability, the connection to, just like King Solomon with, granted he was commanding demons, but you're given that ability and that power and that right for a reason. And they willingly come to you to help you change things in your world.
Yeah, but you got to remember, I'm working on third-party information that I have this ability. I still got that Judeo-Christian upbringing that says, angels are up here and I'm down here, and while they're willing to do me favors and stuff like that, everything is at their discretion and not mine.
Yeah, I kind of get that because when I started studying theta facilitating, the whole concept of theta is you go into the theta state, which is the realm that God communicates with you in. It's like the etheric plane, the astral plane. And it's the state that you enter when you're sleeping or you're in a coma, and it's the state that you're supposedly closest to God. Well, in becoming certified in theta, there's one thing that you have to be able to say. And if you can't say it, there's no way that you're going to do theta. And it's, I command. Because many people think that you're commanding God to do something that he would otherwise not want. But the way I understood the concept so that I was comfortable with from my upbringing was that God is within me. I'm like an individual expression of God. So basically, I'm commanding my own higher consciousness to see something done. And it took me a long time to be able to say the word, it is commanded, for, by going into theta and contacting God that way. So yeah, I had a hard time with the command word because it's different from demanding and commanding. There's a difference. So I wasn't demanding anything of God. I was just commanding that energy be sent forth. Make sense?
Maybe a little, but it still sounds above my pay grade.
No, you're getting there. All right, so since we were talking about angels, do you sometimes think that paranormal experiences are confused with spiritual experiences, or do you think they're one and the same?
Kind of a wide open question there. Most of the paranormal experiences that we investigate in the field, I don't think are angelic. Here's a discussion that came up with me and a couple of mediums. We did a house one night, and in the process of, we ended up talking to every dead relative these people have had for the last 50 years, and I said, there is no way all these ghosts are in this house. But I was pretty sure, without going into the whole story, that we had called across spirits. I do make that distinction. Ghosts are what happens if you don't continue the journey when you die. Spirits are if you continue the journey, and yes, they do come back. I do not like to think that an actual haunting would be attributed to a spirit which would not have an agenda necessarily. Now, if there are reports of, people saying, oh, I saw my dead grandmother, I think she wanted something, that can be spiritual activity. But I don't like to think that a spirit would come around enough to bother you.
Right.
So that's where I kind of make that distinction there. So I pretty much I look at most of what I do in the field from the bottom up. I look for ghost first. Well, I look for squirrels in the attic first. the natural explanations, but assuming that I feel there is a spiritual component to it, then I start with ghost and work my way up the food chain until I come across something that seems to fit.
Yeah, I find a lot of times that people are experiencing visitations from their loved ones and confusing it with paranormal activity. And to me, it's a fine line, but it's paranormal, I guess, to receive visits from someone who has crossed over. But to me, I like to place the paranormal more into, like you were saying, just ghosts or earthbound spirits, because to me, there's like a little fine line of a difference.
I guess the main thing that of course, you're talking to a different clientele than I am, but the thing is, if a spirit knows that it is bothering you, in other words, if you're bothered enough to report the paranormal activity, then I don't think a spirit would purposely do that.
Right. No, because your loved one wouldn't want to make you uncomfortable.
Right.
They just want to express their love, that they're watching over you, and to saying hi. If you feel uncomfortable, then it's definitely not, a spiritual visit or an angelic visit. Angels would never come and bring feelings of uncertainty or anger or fear.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now we're on the same page.
Yeah. And remember, I have a zombie mind from medication for my lung infection, so
I just
be hosting the show.
I just have a zombie mind from all this cold weather. We were talking about it before the show a little bit, and I've actually done surprisingly well this winter. I mean, usually after oddly enough, it doesn't really hit me until the winter equinox, even though the days are getting longer. There's just something about that time of year that up until the spring fall, I just shut down. I can just feel my energy collapse around me and protect it, but I can't get really anything done. I can't concentrate. I've done amazingly well this year with not being able to get outside, and when I am outside, I'm wearing 4 layers of clothes. I figure I have lost approximately 1 to 1.5 hours a day average just putting clothes on and off.
Oh my goodness. Well, you're a little colder up there in Kentucky than we are down here. Although we're still getting cold.
I would think we're a little colder. Yeah, I put it this way: this week it finally got up to around 20, and that felt good.
No, when I have to put on boots instead of go barefoot, there's a problem.
Well, the barefoot outside the house has been out of the question since roughly Christmas.
Wow. And see, I have the beach right outside my door, basically, so barefoot is one of my favorite things to be.
I have snow.
Oh.
But it's supposed to, we're supposed to have a clearing, although it's going to be wet. Of course, it's going to be wet whether it rains or not. But after we get a snowstorm Friday, and then it's supposed to get up like in the 60s next week. So
that'll be nice. Yeah, we have some like really huge storm here. It's all this rain. Like, it's been raining for hours and hours and hours, and supposedly like people are all freaking out and emptying the bread and milk aisles in Atlanta and stuff like that over some rain. So I don't know what that means. Kind of weird.
Well, up in Georgia and South Carolina, they've had ice.
Well, yeah, we haven't had ice.
So,
not yet, anyways.
I will excuse that because they don't know how to deal with it to begin with, and they're apparently getting a pretty good shot of it up in there.
Yeah, they are. Several of my friends live around there, and they keep posting on Facebook and stuff about how horrible the ice is. And especially last time, wasn't it just a week ago they had the same thing and it snowed and all that stuff?
No, they had snow and then they just freaked.
Yeah. I don't understand that. I like snow as long as I'm looking at it. I don't want to be out in it.
Well, I'm totally over it. I'm ready. I'm ready for spring, warmer temperatures, whatever it takes.
I lived in Kentucky for 4 years, and we never had snow. Like, there were snow flurries, but there was never snow. So I feel like I got gypped by living in Kentucky.
Explain something to me. Why do women think that by saying a word twice that it takes on a new meaning?
I'm not sure. I'm just a freak.
My wife does that all the time.
Well,
it's like if something's on a high shelf, she'll say it's not on the high shelf, it's on the high shelf. And you just said snow. And
we like to exaggerate things. It's just, but I'm a Fruit Loop, so I say things over and over sometimes just to I feel like it gets my point across more, I guess. Because. I'm being silly.
Okay, I didn't come on here to talk about the weather. What do you want to talk about, dear?
Yeah, okay. I want to hear more about your dowsing thing, because that totally interests me. Tell people about your dowsing experiments and experiences.
Well, basically, I got into dowsing just on I doused on the farm, practical dowsing, some people like to call it, but for different things, but had never really used it much. And then I discovered it one night on a ghost hunt. I said, hey, nobody brought an EMF meter, and we were having a lot of personal experiences. And I said, here, hold on. And I went out the car and tore up a couple of coat hangers. And I found out that I was fairly good at it. We were getting some interesting results, but I'm not the type of person that's happy just to get results. I actually had to dig into it and find out why, or try to find out why we're getting those results and why things are working the way they are. So I started looking into the way energy can be thrown around, the ideomotor effect. A lot of people say, oh, it's just the ideomotor effect. And then actually, based on even what Albert Einstein said about it, it is the ideomotor effect. But the thing is, ideomotor effect is still from a stimulus. And so now we're trying to figure out how to measure that stimulus, at least in a predictable way, if not finding a cute little flashy light meter that will measure it for us.
I don't understand those meters. Like my team, it uses the EMF thing. I get the whole EMF thing, but everybody, whether you're a team member or the client, everybody gets excited when those little lights go off. With the K2, I'm like, okay, it's just little lights.
Yeah, the K2, it's based on a bad premise, first of all. I'm actually got a group coming on my show in about a month that has something on their website that I'm going to call them on. But the first thing, if you ask somebody they'll say, well, if you ask them why they use an EMF meter, and they say, well, ghosts are energy. And first of all, we don't know that ghosts are energy, at least not energy as we understand energy. In our side of the veil, we have the EM spectrum. Then we can say from this frequency to that frequency. But we don't know if in their universe, we'll call it their universe, if across in their metaphysical plane, if possibly they're just as solid as you and I, but physical matter may not have to follow the same rules on that side, and it's when they interact with us, there may be, I'm sure there's an energy component. David Roundtree's actually looked into more. He thinks it's more of a like a gamma burst, basically an annihilation of matter when their matter crosses with our matter. So we're trying to find ways to measure that. And I think if you're at the right place at the right time, yes, you can get that on a typical EMF meter. The problem with that is our EMF meters are tuned to your wall socket. They will tell you very well if your microwave is busted, but they don't tell you what frequency the energy is in. And the frequency, wavelength of the energy is really more of an important thing to know than just how many lights it's kicking on the K2 meter. So I like carrying one because I do like to be able to correlate what we think is a paranormal interaction with an energy fluctuation. But at the same time, if I'm walking down a hallway and I get a random K2 spike, it might make me break stride. There's just not enough information there to call it, to even think about calling it paranormal.
Like, I would get excited if at the same exact moment I was receiving something psychically, or I was I personally was seeing an apparition or feeling a presence. If it all happened at the same time, then I would be excited.
Exactly. We've tried to correlate EVP productive EVP sessions with the EMF spikes. We found very little correlation, not enough to not call random.
Mm-hmm.
The particular night that I started dowsing, the thing about that night was we kept getting. I mean, our hair we'd be walking along in this place, and our hair would just stand up.
Oh, I love that.
So we really thought there was a strong energy component that night that we failed to bring our EMF meters to measure, and so that was why that particular night I would have liked to have had some hard equipment to see if we could get a correlation between the two. But as a rule, I'll carry one, but it doesn't come out of the pocket very often.
Yeah.
But now the dowsing rods, I wear them out.
Well, see, I'm gonna have the next time our team has like a fun investigation. I've already proposed to them about using new methods like this because, well, one, just using me is something that they all get used to. But
well, this is how we present it to teams because there are a lot of teams with good reason to be skeptical of dowsing rods. But we explain it this way. If you suspend disbelief long enough to accept that, let's see if a spirit can manipulate the rods. Okay, now if in the case, take the psychic out of the equation, we call it pseudo-psychic. Mm-hmm. Basically, it gives us a chance to respond, theoretically, to the same energies you respond to.
Yeah.
So now if the ghost can manipulate those rods, if then they become involved in our conversation, just as they will be create a emotional bond to you. That gives the average investigator holding an EMF meter, who, for the most part, a ghost will not give a flying crap about.
Right.
If they find out they can easily communicate and get some information to that investigator, then they might be interested in cooperating enough to leave us that good EVP to, God forbid, move a glass when we ask them to. In other words, get something on technical data that we triggered by using the dowsing rods. That's how we try to approach the dowsing.
You see, I like that because if you're a medium on an investigation, you're seeing and hearing and feeling. I mean, and basically it's all a mental process. I mean, it's coming in your head and through your head. You're seeing everything with your mind's eye or with your third eye. No one else can see or hear or experience that, so they're relying on what you relay. And I want to very much validate at the same moment what I'm receiving in a way in an investigation that actually means something. Like, to me, I'm just like extra information. But that's part of my research, is I want the medium to follow like a scientific protocol so that information can be validated as the investigation goes along. And that's why I'm so fascinated with the dowsing rods, because I think that's a way to maybe do that.
Now, an interesting point. Okay, now as a medium, you get most of your messages interpreted. You don't necessarily get clear messages. You get pictures. You get Okay, with the dowsing rods, everything is pretty cut and dried. If the question is asked correctly, which sometimes we do ask it different ways because we kind of hedge our bets. But basically, we're getting yes, no, multiple choice answers. On many occasions, I've been working with a psychic who was taking the story that the ghost was giving them in one direction. And I started dowsing. And as I started dowsing, not only did and then some, as a matter of fact, one time the psychic started, she wasn't even paying attention to me. But I'm on the other side of the room asking basically the same questions, and I'm getting yes, no, left, right. And she came over, she said, every time you get yes, I hear yes. I never hear yes. Oh, you get a picture of a barn, something like that. And on a couple of occasions, I've actually convinced the psychic that their initial interpretation of the messages were completely wrong, because the information I was getting was so clear-cut and distinct, and they were able to tune in on it once I got the interest of the ghost. So,
if it was the other way around, if the if the medium said yes and then your rods got a yes, then to me that's validation for the medium. But if the rods are getting the yes first and then the medium second, there's no way to prove that validation. I mean, the medium knows for herself, but yeah.
Yeah, as a rule, we will get the same information on the rods, only we just get it clearer.
Mm-hmm.
And then another thing, because I'm in the building, I have been called a conduit, a psychic battery. All types of terms have been thrown at me. But psychics, for whatever reason, when they're in my proximity, generally say they can actually see and hear clearer. Even though I can't get squat without a set of dowsing rods in my hand. I'm like, what?
You're like a power station. We were talking before the show about how strong your life force energy is. Mm-hmm, and it's like you are a big, huge battery of EMF and of everything. I mean, to me, that's how I would see your energy when I saw your life force and your aura. Yeah, it's something that a medium can draw from to become.
Yeah, that's the only question that hadn't really been answered, whether I'm actually empowering the medium. In other words, some mediums can tune into my energy to enhance their own skills, or if somehow my energy pokes a little hole in the veil where the messages can come across clearer to the medium. I'm blind, so I don't know.
This would be your answer. Okay, when you're on investigations, do things happen more frequently when you're in a room or when you're out of a room? Like,
how would I know if I'm out of the room?
Well, like from your evidence. Like, okay, so say if you had a camera in one room and you did an EVP or something, do you get more activity when you're actually physically present in the room or when you're away from the room?
Or I can say that our best video evidence has happened, and our best audio evidence has happened when I've been in the room. We have gotten some really good catches when I was on the other end of the building, but to date, what I have been able to document, yes, my best evidence has been when I am in a room. But now I don't know if that is because of my aura or if it's because I'm also told that I have the voice. And basically, ghosts listen to me. Whether that is an actual manifestation of how my voice carries or whether there's something about my energy that carries my voice to them, I am told that ghosts listen to me. So in other words, do I draw in psychic energy? I don't know the mechanism that I draw psychic energy to me, but I'm not comfortable with the term ghost magnet. A lot of people say, I'm a ghost magnet. Whenever I show up, things happen. If I don't consciously work for it, then stuff don't happen. I have to do something to trigger it.
Right. Well, okay, everyone, like as a medium, we have a certain vibration. And the vibration is constantly going out. So that's what tells spirits that they can come communicate with us.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So you have the same thing in your voice, but on a different level and in a different way. So, and it has to be for a reason. You're either meant to bridge the gap to either, solve mystery in the paranormal or to help that spirit come to terms with itself to maybe move on. I mean, everything has a purpose. And if you have that power in your voice, then it's definitely for a purpose. It's like bringing light to the dark.
To take myself into a whole metaphysical BS level that I don't often do on the radio, I believe that I am here as a release valve. I do believe that I am here to cross over spirits. More so, we like to say help the living, but I believe as much to help the dead, whether they want it or not. And yes, when I go into a location, when we went to, last time I went to Waverly, as I learned about this ability to cross over spirits that I seem to have, I became torn. Okay, I believe we have our world, they have their world. Mm-hmm. And they don't belong in our world. If they're messing around in our world, they're on the wrong side of the veil. So I kind of have this justice thing, I guess it would be called, where I am. I feel like I have an obligation to help the ones along that are either interfering with the living or want the help. Now, originally, it actually came up in my mind, if I can do this, do I have an obligation to help all of them? And I kind of was torn with that because, okay, if I go to a big famous location like Waverly Hills and there's hundreds of ghosts there, should I leave them in the building? And that was kind of we'll call it a moral dilemma that that I had.
I have the same dilemma too, especially with these known haunted locations now. You know that you can go investigate and pay for and everything. Most of them now you have to sign a form saying that you will not cross over any spirits.
I will not sign that form. I actually interviewed somebody on the radio from a some house up in maybe Iowa. It wasn't the Villisca house, but it was that direction. And one of the rules is, like you said, you may not do anything to cross the spirits over. And I kind of called them out on it. I said, wait a minute, what if they want to leave? Well, they said, well, they don't want to leave. And I said, I could not agree to that. If they come to me and I get any indication, basically now what I do when I do a location, I will generally say, if anybody wants help, I'm here. Let me know.
Me too.
And if I get any indication that they want help, I don't care. I don't care what I freaking sign, which I'm not going to sign anything that says, unless it's in the fine print. I guess it could be in the fine print and I missed it, but I do feel I have an obligation to help them along if they want the help. And of course, now most of my cases are actually the living are the ones doing the complaining. Yeah. And so in that I have no moral dilemma. I do whatever it takes to escort them along their path.
Me too. There's no way I'm going to sign that paper. I mean, being a medium and a healer, that's part of my purpose, and I can't go against who I am.
Even if I sign the paper, my problem with it is, as far as I'm concerned, if I enable that by signing that paper, if they want to leave and for some reason can't, you are holding them hostage.
Exactly.
And so once again, that strong sense of justice, right and wrong in me, would not allow me to do that.
Yeah, me either. And then I started I'm like, oh, I'm not signing your paper, but how would you know who specifically crossed someone over? And if you're not psychic or an investigator yourself, how are you going to know that the spirit crossed over in the first place? Well, I guess eventually, if the house wasn't haunted or the location wasn't eventually haunted, they'd get the idea. But it doesn't stop me. I still do it.
The only place I've worked, and we've actually crossed a lot of spirits there, but we've been called up to Bobby Mackey several times.
I want to go there so bad.
No, you don't.
I don't.
No, I guess maybe you do. Because the place is
I'm just a music fan, so.
Okay, well, there. Go for the music, stay with the ghost. But we've been called in there several times as kind of a release valve. If the activity got too violent, too aggressive, we've come in and we've been able to quiet it down. And in the process, we've crossed a few spirits over. But that's the one place, and I'm actually become uncomfortable with it because they don't want it actually cleared. Because, they get... but at the same time, we do have an understanding that if anything wants to leave, I will help it along its way. So, but that place, it makes me a little uncomfortable for that reason. There's a lot of negative activity that goes on there, and I don't feel like the measures have actually been taken to put it to an end once and for all.
Right. And do you agree that once there is a negative energy, the more you feed the negative energy, the more it grows? I mean, because all the attention that the place gets that's negative, it's just feeding and feeding and feeding. So I said 3 times.
I talked to somebody about that the other night. He asked me, what if they just tore the place down, burned it to the ground? I said, if they make a parking lot out of it, it'll be fine. But I said, if you build another building and a week later you let paranormal investigators walk in there saying, scratch me, I know you're here, pull my hair, beat me, whip me, whatever. You'll have the negative activity back in a short time, because negativity draws negativity, whether it's in the paranormal world or not.
Yeah. And one of my theories is that the consciousness of any investigator or any visitor to like a historic, location, if your thoughts or your consciousness is set on the stories or the myth or the legend behind that place, then you're feeding the legend of that place, and you're inviting that energy to manifest itself, whether it's really there or not. Energy is everywhere, so you could be calling energy negative energy or dark energy from somewhere else, including the energy that you brought with you. Like, the consciousness of the paranormal investigator or anyone is key in going into a location or a supposed haunted location or even a historical location. I mean, your thought investigator, to me, they need to be as clear as possible and as positive as possible before you go into a known haunted place.
I'll even throw another theory of mine out. And
okay.
This is, and actually it's a theory of mine, but my spirit guides tell me I'm right. There are ghosts out there, just like, basically, they're human ghosts that in life, for whatever reason, may not have been happy with who they were. Well, they are just waiting for you to give them a personality, to give them something to strive for. If you go into a house and want to talk to the legendary ghost of Aunt Edna, and Aunt Edna is long gone,
yeah.
This ghost will accommodate you. It will become Aunt Edna. Now, one thing I have on that, a lot of times people report seeing ghosts that have dark eyes. And one of the common things, it's a demon. Actually, I think no. I think that is a ghost that is not showing you its true form.
Mm-hmm.
Because the eyes are the window to the soul and everything. So
exactly.
if it's impersonating somebody else's soul, then the eyes would not be there. So at Waverly, though, there's this thing they call the creeper, which is this dark entity, dark colored, black, that skitters about the ceilings and walls and scares people. And so I asked my spirit guides when we were there, is this something we need to deal with? And they said no. And so I said, okay, now, is this demonic? No. And I kept questioning, and it came up. I said, is this a tourist ghost? And they said, yes. This is a ghost that is found. It can entertain people by doing what it does, and it likes it. And it's perfectly happy there. It does not want to cross over. It enjoys the attention, and so we left him alone.
Mm-hmm. I had a case, it's like a personal case one time. This person she was in rehab, and she was opened up to darker energies through acupuncture. Okay? So she had the dark energy with her, but every fear and every thought that she had, or every imagining of what this dark energy could be because of all the TV shows that she watched and all the movies that she watched, the energy began to take on each form until she thought she was cursed and haunted by like 1,000 spirits and demons. And
yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I do believe that a lot of what we record in the field or what we experience in the field is just what you described. It's a manifestation of the baggage that we have brought into a location.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Definitely.
Yep, there we go.
Woo! Well, we're not done. You still got time.
Okay. You're the host. I just sit here and answer questions in my typical BS fashion.
See, it's like talking to your friend about, things, and I get caught up in your answer, and then I forget that I'm being a host. I can't help it. I get so caught up in talking or listening to you talk anyways. All right, my next thing, the ghost box. I have an issue with the ghost box, even though I'm kind of like a ghost box. And I think ghost box is fun, but I don't think it's a valid way to investigate. What do you think?
Okay, it is. First of all, it's a horribly, horribly overused method to investigate. And any team that claims that they use science to investigate should not use the ghost box, because unless you want to get into the science of it and explain to me how it works, how we're able to capture the voices on there, then don't call it science. Now, I will admit, it is a delightful way to break up the monotony of talking to walls all night.
Yes.
Now, anybody that questions the ghost box, I will point them to, I have an article on ihuntghost.com. It's called the Ghost Box Validation.
That's
Basically,
why I asked.
okay. Once we collected information through a ghost box that we were later able to validate through other means. And not only we validated through dowsing, then we actually got it on hard camera recording and a digital recorder. So we took the information that we got from the ghost box originally, which honestly I thought might be BS because it was the name Loretta. And it was, had on AM radio, and I said, if you can't find a DJ saying Loretta Lynn on AM radio on a night, you're not trying very hard. But so but working with that name, we went back and said, okay, if you're here, we want to hear you say your name, and we had the ghost box out. Well, we got the name, but it didn't come across the ghost box the next time. It came across our camera, which was roughly 20 foot away from us, and to a lesser degree on the digital recorder that was sitting right next to the ghost box. But you can tell it's not on the ghost box.
Right.
So in other words, the ghost box can work. The thing is, you're not going to. It's a thrill factor, but you're not likely to get information on it that is going to lead you to the answers that you claim you're looking for. Now, if all you want to do is get scared and have ghost stories to tell, and if you're honest about that and that's what you do, I have no problem with it.
Right.
But if you're going to call yourself an investigator and you're trying to find out the answers to life after death, blah blah blah, the ghost box has a very limited use. And even now, even though I used it, but I limit it to 5-10 minutes tops if we're having a good night on it.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I agree. The founder of our team, he passed away. He was my very best friend. So it's hard to talk about him sometimes. But he loved the ghost box, and he loved using it only when I was in the room. Because he was hoping that we would validate each other, the ghost box and I. And one time we actually did. But he knew that I didn't like to use the ghost box in any other part of the investigation or to use it as evidence. And actually, my team gifted me with the ghost box after he passed away. So that was sweet. But I found... I'm seriously considering, around Halloween, I kind of host seances. And one that I hosted before on live radio, I took the ghost box with me just to put on the table to see if anything would happen through it while I was doing my thing. Nothing happened. I like to keep experimenting in that,
right.
pretext with it.
And I will never tell a team not to experiment with the ghost box. But if you rely on it, if you leave a location and you realize that all you've done all night is listen to the ghost box, then you're not an investigator.
No.
Now
or a researcher.
Right. You can be, but you can call yourself a ghost hunter at that point because you're hunting for ghosts.
Yes.
But I first got really intrigued with it. I'd seen it on TV. I bought one off eBay. And took it in, and so what we did, we asked questions that we knew the answer to. So this way, we had something, if we heard something, because if you listen to one of those things long enough, you will hear the Gettysburg Address. But I asked it to say my name. Well, we heard it, but, Wes, that's not very impressive. It's one syllable word, could have easily matrixed it out of the noise. So a few questions later, we said, okay, I want to make sure we heard that. Say my name again. This time, and we had it on digital recorder. We thought we heard it time, but on the digital recorder, it's really clear. They said, Wesley. Okay, that kind of freaked me out. So I was playing that for some guests at my house to say, hey, I want you to all to hear this. And they said, wow, it said your last name. And we hadn't even noticed it, but if you play it on a set of speakers that are higher pitched than my headphones, when the second time around, the ghost, apparently wanting to make sure that I got the message, said my entire name.
Well, now, see, that would be almost evidence for me.
Well, it is evidence, but what is it evidence of? It's evidence that either they heard my name, or who knows, ghost, if they can connect to us spiritually, because people don't call me Mr. Forsyth, they may have had a connection there where they knew my entire name. They may know a whole lot more about me than I realize, because we do have a it's a location that we have investigated a lot.
Right, so your energy is there, your imprint is already there.
Yes, and matter of fact, Cassidy Ray, the teenage medium, she went in for a reading, and the owner was there, and he said, hey, Cassidy, ask him if they know Wesley. And the medium said, do you know Wesley? And she said the answer wasn't yes or no, it was, is he here? So I got a kick out of that.
Well, you are, you attract them, so they look forward to you.
The one does, apparently. The Loretta, because now that I call her by name, we have this big, really creepy relationship, apparently. And
how do you feel about that?
She thinks it's hilarious. Well, mainly because Loretta gives us some really good evidence over the years. She's very cooperative. Now, there's a younger spirit there, a younger girl, that when Cassidy was there, this one has never communicated with me much. And then kind of called her out a little bit and said, why don't you like me? And she said it was because you always look like you have, I forget what it was, something about my face. You always had some kind of expression. And so I kind of said, well, what would it take to make you not be so ill towards me, or at least become more attached? And she said, and the answer, and I said, well, actually, she didn't come up with that. I said, well, how about if I get somebody that you love? Because one thing that in Crossing Spirits, where we found, my spirit guides are very good at going and finding family members. Mm-hmm. And then the little girl said, don't promise, tell the old man not to promise anything that he can't deliver. And so right there I realized this is a spirit that is impersonating a child, mm-hmm. and doesn't want me messing with her world because she likes the attention she's getting in this form. So we just kind of backed off.
Oh, yeah. I think you're right.
Once again, that's all metaphysical stuff, and nothing I can prove to anybody because I got it from a psychic.
Well,
I love you, psychic
queen. You can talk about metaphysics all you want here. I am metaphysics.
That's the thing. See, I have to ride that fence because I love psychics. I love working with mediums. I found several that I work with very well, and then I found others that I cannot hardly be in the same building with.
You haven't worked with me yet.
No. That's because I haven't made it to Florida and you haven't made it to Kentucky.
Well, no, you need to use me remotely. That's what I do the very best. I can place my consciousness in your location. It's really cool.
Well, as the weather breaks and I start taking cases again, we will have to see about doing that. But generally, because of the cases that we get when we go in, we have an agenda to clear the house, and I don't really need a lot of input. Basically, all I need is a medium to steer my energy.
Right.
Tell me which room to mess with, and.
Okay, so you don't think a medium can do that remotely?
I did not say that.
Okay, I'm just asking. I'm not.
I'm just saying. I already. Okay, first of all, I'm going to be in the building, pushing out my energy.
Right.
The other thing is, I generally will have a medium with me, who is already, giving me on the spot information. Right. At a certain point, too many mediums makes a large, and
that's coming up a lot lately.
Really, all I'm saying is we could do it as an experiment sometime, but to date, I've not needed extra input because of my psychic battery thing. the mediums that I work with, we've had I hate not to brag, we've had 100% success rate. So as long as it's working.
You can brag all you want to. You're the guest. You can brag all you want to.
Yeah, but unfortunately, people. One night I made. Okay, here's my thing, and I made this claim, and somebody in a chat room on another site said that it was being. I forget what term they used, but basically meant I was bragging, being big-headed, whatever. But I have the indirect ability to cross over. Okay, you always heard that you can't cross over a spirit that doesn't want to cross.
Exactly.
I can do it.
Really? Okay.
Go ahead. Now, but now once again, it's not a matter. It might be a matter of my personality, but I really think it's a matter of my sense of justice. So, in other words, once they break the law, once they are interfering with the living, then they have forfeited their right to be here. And I don't do it myself. I call upon the angels. I explain the situation, and we get them out of the home.
See, that's what I do with spiritual releasement. If it's an evil or dark entity or energy, it has no business interfering with purity or with innocent people. So I have every right through my connection to what I call source to command that spirit to be sent back to where it came from, or that entity. And people don't get how I can do that. It's because evil, if you believe in God or higher source, has no place interfering with a person's free will.
See, now the only thing I do differently is I take that down another step or two to less than evil, just curmudgeonly, just pain in the ass, just But once again, this is our world. If you're going to mess around in our world, you have to be on your best behavior.
Exactly.
And if you're making the children cry, then we have a problem. Then another thing we've encountered is we call them conjured spirits. Basically, they're along the terms of what people generally describe poltergeist as. Where it's something you create. We've actually found entities that we feel were created by people, and they follow a lot of the same rules as ghost, but they're not necessarily evil. Generally, we can pick them out by, we just kind of ask the right questions. We've come across that. We've also, up around northern Kentucky, we've come across some elemental spirits, just good old-fashioned earth spirits that were co-opted into doing bad things by either, whether it was human input, demonic input, doesn't matter. Once we released them from their obligation, the activity went away.
That's excellent, because elementals, they have free will as well, but they still have to follow. They still have to follow a certain agenda according to, I guess, Mother Earth or Source, whatever you want to call it. So the fact that they can get themselves into a situation where they're fulfilling someone else's agenda, I had never considered that before.
We've only come across it in really one case, but it was spread out over an area. And that was the answers. Once again, nothing I could prove to anybody, but that was the answers that my spirit guides. Because I go through the list of questions with them. Is this demonic? Is this a ghost? Now, if I don't get an answer to demonic, if I get a negative, no, it's not a ghost, no, it's not a demon, then I have to start looking in between. But if an elemental is a very broad range of entities.
Yes.
I mean, if you'd asked me 10 years ago if I believed in fairies, I'd have said, no, But nowadays, nowadays I do too. I actually have one that hangs around, but now her job is just to keep me out of trouble with other fairies, apparently.
Well, I can see where that's needed.
But apparently, my entire spirit guide posse is their job is to keep me out of trouble. But
I believe that.
But we actually, we used her one time. We encountered something we couldn't figure out what it was exactly. We ended up calling it fairykin, which means it's something like a fairy that was bothering someone's dog and making the dog just miserable. And
Really?
we said yes, and we said after we figured out what it was, I said, hey, would you mind going and talking to it? And the next day they said the dog never had any more problems.
Really?
So what can you do? I want to be a skeptic. I do. I want to be a skeptic, but these stories keep coming back to me after I leave a place.
Uh-huh.
Because I don't, if I'm willing to say, what am I doing crossing over spirits? I'm saying a prayer, why would a ghost listen to me? Why would a demon listen to me? Why would anything listen to me? But then when we leave a house and 3 months later, they say, hey, it's been awful quiet since you left.
Okay, so what if you were ordained, and I'm totally not your religious girl. I'm a minister, but not a religious one. But what if you were ordained in this lifetime to be able to do that? That is your gift. You're ordained to be able to command.
I almost don't. Well, okay, I almost don't even want to say this on the radio, but I have been told by my spirit guides and one psychic that claims to hear my spirit guides that I actually am ordained. That this is all part of my job. So in other words, I can do just not as pretty, but I can do a lot of what priests do and everything. I actually, but I asked one time, should I get ordained? Send off a little piece of paper on the internet, and they said no, don't bother. So
No. Don't bother with a piece of paper.
Okay. Here's how I look at myself. The question came up when I first started discovering all this. Why would God choose someone like me? I'm not religious. Haven't been to church since I was young. I'm spiritual, but I believe in God and everything. But I'm not a religious person, and basically, I've decided that I am God's contractor. I'm His outside contractor. I get the jobs done that the faithful are not prepared to do because they have to follow the dogma involved.
Exactly.
I am God's drywall installer. That's, I don't claim any high power. This is just something that I've been given, and as the jobs are given to me, I do them.
Exactly. Well, Wes, our time is up. I really enjoyed this. It was amazing. Tell people where they can find you really quick.
Okay, liveparanormal.com, Sunday nights, 8 p.m., or ihuntghost.com. If you go there, you can find me all the time. But 8 p.m. Sunday nights, live show, Paranormal Filler.
Thanks, everyone.